Even Californians have caught up on how unbearable Meghan Markle and Prince Harry are. A new report has revealed the couple's neighbours in Montecito have had enough.
You know what's more devastating than being hated? Being ignored. And that is exactly what is happening to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex right now in the one place they thought they could reinvent themselves, Montecito, California, the exclusive, sun-drenched enclave where Oprah lives, where Rob Lowe lives, where the ultra-wealthy and the ultra-powerful have carved out their little slice of paradise. And Harry and Meghan? According to a source who spoke to Page 6, their neighbors are done. Not angry, not outraged, just done. And if you think that doesn't sting, you clearly haven't been paying attention to just how desperately these two have been clawing for relevance, acceptance, and belonging since the moment they bolted from the royal family. So today, we are pulling back every curtain. We are going through every bombshell. The Page 6 report, the devastating Variety exposé, the Netflix chaos, the Deadline rescue mission press release that fooled absolutely no one, and the growing mountain of evidence that Harry and Meghan's American dream is not just fading, it is collapsing in real time. Stay with me, because this story has layers, and every single layer is more extraordinary than the last. The Montecito verdict is in, and it is brutal. Let's start with the story that broke this wide open. Page 6. And if you know anything about Page 6, you know they do not run a story like this without ironclad sourcing, confirmed what many had suspected for months. Harry and Meghan's Montecito neighbors are avoiding them, actively, deliberately. And here is the quote that should stop everyone in their tracks. A local source told Page 6, and I want you to really hear this, "No one wants to be seen with them. It's not hate. It's just a growing awareness that they are takers with zero self-awareness. Everyone's exhausted by them." Read that again. Takers with zero self-awareness. Now think about where they live. Montecito is not a neighborhood where the average person is easily impressed by fame or wealth. These are people who have private jets and vineyard estates. These are people who have sat across the dinner table from presidents and prime ministers. For a community like that to look at Harry and Meghan, two of the most globally recognized human beings on the planet, and say, "We'd rather not," that is not just a social snub. That is a verdict. And here is what makes it even more telling. Ask yourself, when was the last time you saw Oprah Winfrey anywhere near Meghan Markle? Oprah, who gifted the world that infamous CBS interview. Oprah, who sat in that garden in a wide-brimmed hat and essentially handed Meghan the microphone to detonate a bomb at the royal family. Oprah, who lives in the same community. She has not been seen anywhere near them in a very long time. And Gwyneth Paltrow, who also has a home in Montecito, not pinging around with Meghan, not grabbing lunch, not making appearances together. When even the most famously progressive, celebrity-friendly zip code in America starts quietly closing its doors, what does that tell you? It tells you the word has gotten out, and the word is not good. What does takers actually mean? Now let's be precise here, because the label takers is not just a catty insult. It is a documented pattern of behavior that has followed this couple around for years. Do you remember the stories about Meghan borrowing a friend's townhome, asking to use someone else's vacation property? The whispers about, "Can we use your private jet?" And then, most audaciously of all, reaching out to the Biden White House to essentially ask if they could hitch a ride on Air Force One. Air Force One, the presidential aircraft of the United States of America, like it was a car share. This is not speculation. These stories have been circulating in royal and celebrity circles for years, and they paint a very consistent picture of two people who believe the world owes them something, and who are absolutely stunned when the world eventually disagrees. And here is the thing about takers. They do not just take resources. They take energy. They take goodwill. They take the emotional bandwidth of everyone around them. And at some point, and that point clearly has now arrived in Montecito, people just stop having anything left to give. One commentator who has been closely tracking this saga for years put it perfectly when she said she does not just think of them as takers. She thinks of them as destroyers, because everywhere Harry and Meghan go and everyone they come into contact with eventually gets consumed. The royal family, the Netflix relationship, the Spotify deal, friends who were once close, business partners who were once enthusiastic. All of it destroyed. And think about this. When they first arrived in Montecito, there must have been a buzz, right? The Duke and Duchess of Sussex, fresh off stepping back from royal duties, global superstars, moving into a $14 million estate. Who wouldn't be curious? Who wouldn't want to be invited over? They had 2 small children, which naturally builds a social network. They had name recognition that most people spend their entire careers trying to achieve. And yet, here we are. The Netflix catastrophe, told in full. Now let's talk about the story that is running parallel to the Montecito isolation, because it is arguably even more damaging. And I want to walk through this carefully, because this is not just gossip. This is about the systematic unraveling of a business relationship that was supposed to be their golden ticket to American reinvention. Variety, one of the most powerful and respected trade publications in Hollywood, ran a piece that sent shockwaves through the entertainment industry. The headline said everything and nothing at the same time, but the details inside were atomic. Ted Sarandos. If you do not know that name, let me tell you who he is. Ted Sarandos is arguably the single most powerful person in Hollywood right now. He is the co-CEO of Netflix. He is the man who greenlights billion-dollar projects. He is the man every studio executive, every A-list star, every producer in the business wants to impress. And according to Variety, Ted Sarandos would not get on a phone call with Meghan Markle without a lawyer present. Now, was he joking? Variety, doing their due diligence, noted that the intent was unclear. But here is what they did not do. They did not print a denial. There was no statement from Ted Sarandos saying, "I never said that." There was no Netflix spokesperson calling the story false. The legal qualification about intent? That is the same shield that could have protected the royal family from Harry's claims in Spare. And somehow, when it applies to them, it reads very differently. Let us now talk about what led to this point. Because the Netflix deal, reported publicly as being worth around $100 million, though insiders say the real figure was closer to $60 million, and that was before production costs, staffing, publicists, and overhead were stripped out, was supposed to be transformational. It was announced with enormous fanfare. The Sussex brand, exported to streaming, democratizing the royal experience for a global audience, or something like that. What actually happened was this. Netflix cut them a staggering check, and almost immediately, Harry and Meghan went and sat down with Oprah Winfrey and gave away some of the most explosive content of their story, for free, on a competing platform. Then Harry wrote Spare, the fastest-selling memoir in publishing history, and handed that to Penguin Random House. Again, not Netflix. So Netflix was left holding a very expensive contract and watching the actual Sussex story get distributed everywhere except through them. And then, when the actual content finally began to take shape, the battles began. Meghan was reportedly making creative demands that went well beyond what any executive producing credit would reasonably justify. When directors came up with ideas she did not like, she apparently made her feelings known, loudly. There are reports of her exiting Zoom meetings abruptly when conversations did not go her way. And here is the extraordinary detail. Hours after one of these exits, a Netflix employee would receive a message making clear that Meghan was unhappy about something that had been said. She was dropping out of meetings and then sending aftershocks. Her response to this? She cited her children. "She has small kids," she said. They burst into the room. She had to step away. Let me ask you something. Meghan Markle, a woman who by all accounts employs multiple nannies, is stepping out of high-stakes Netflix executive meetings because her children are running in unsupervised? Does that track for you? Because it does not track for anyone who has been paying attention to how tightly controlled her household is reported to be. The more likely explanation, and this is not unkind speculation, this is logical inference, is that she was in over her head, creatively, professionally. The feedback from Spotify, which came before Netflix and ended in similar fashion, was damning. A lack of original ideas, an inability to commit to a creative direction, a tendency to back away from good concepts at the last moment. The podcast Archetypes was not even an original concept. It drew heavily from existing frameworks. And Pearl, the animated Netflix series that was supposed to be a passion project for Meghan, quietly shelved, partly because an author came forward with documented proof that a very similar idea had been her intellectual property for years. This is the creative track record that Ted Sarandos was dealing with. And when Variety put it all on the page, something remarkable happened. The Deadline counter-move that backfired. Within what felt like hours of the Variety piece circulating, a story dropped in Deadline. Harry and Meghan, it announced breathlessly, have a new Netflix project in the works, a polo-themed scripted drama, executive produced under their Archewell Productions banner. Attached to it, and this is the part that gave some people momentary pause, were the names Josh Schwartz and Stephanie Savage of Fake Empire, the production company behind The OC and Gossip Girl. Now, on the surface, that attachment sounds credible. Schwartz and Savage are legitimate, beloved television creators. Their names give any project an air of seriousness. But let us think about this critically for one moment. Netflix, the same Netflix whose co-CEO allegedly will not take Meghan's calls without legal counsel, is going to announce a brand new scripted project with the Sussexes mere hours after the most damaging trade press the couple has ever received. Without a single corroborating Netflix statement, without any of the usual studio infrastructure language that accompanies a genuine development announcement. This had all the hallmarks of a Sussex-generated counter-narrative, a press release designed not to announce a real project, but to flood the zone, to give sympathetic media outlets something else to write about, to dilute the Variety story with noise, and it was a catastrophic miscalculation. Because rather than making the Variety piece look overblown, the Deadline story made the Sussexes look exactly like what their critics have always said they are: reactive, unsophisticated, and playing checkers while everyone else in Hollywood plays chess. Think about it from Ted Sarandos's perspective. You've just been the subject of a devastating Variety piece about your strained relationship with two of your most expensive and underperforming clients. And before the ink is even dry, those clients have apparently leaked a story to Deadline suggesting everything is fine and there's a new project coming. How does that make you feel about those clients? Does it make you want to recommit to them? Or does it make every instinct you have scream, "This is exactly the problem"? And then there is the underlying absurdity of the project itself. A polo-themed drama from the couple whose polo reality series for Netflix landed on the streaming platform's least-watched list for 2025. Not quietly underperformed, not missed its targets. We are talking about a show that, by all accounts, was a nuclear-level embarrassment. And the proposed solution is a scripted version of the same thing? Nobody in America cares about polo. This is not an opinion. It is a cultural reality. Polo is not football. It is not basketball. It is not even a sport that registers meaningfully in American pop culture. And yet this is the creative vision that Archewell Productions is bringing to the table. The body language, the control, and what it reveals. There is another dimension to this story that deserves serious examination. Because while the business failures mount and the neighborhood shuns them, something is happening in Harry and Meghan's relationship dynamic that has been documented, photographed, filmed, and dissected by behavioral experts. And it is worth talking about honestly. We have all seen the footage. Meghan touching Harry's arm at an event and redirecting his attention mid-conversation. Meghan appearing on stage at a Kevin Costner benefit for first responders when reports suggested she had been asked not to come on stage, then patting Harry on the back, essentially calling him back to her side while he was in the middle of engaging with someone else. His reaction, caught on camera, was extraordinary. He turned, registered that it was her, and turned right back around. And then there is what Variety reported about the Netflix meetings specifically. During sessions with executives, whenever Harry would try to speak or contribute, Meghan would reportedly touch him on the shoulder or the leg, a redirect, a signal, not now. Her attorneys dismissed this as a misogynistic characterization. They called it a sexist narrative about Meghan bossing her husband around. But here is the problem with that defense. We have the footage. We have seen her do exactly this in public, on walkabouts, at events, in polo matches where she has reached for trophies that were not hers to hold. This is not a characterization, it is a documented behavioral pattern. A body language expert who has analyzed footage extensively uses a concept called trophy behavior to describe what Meghan does. A display rooted in dominance, in making something or someone a physical symbol of status. And in watching how she interacts not just with Harry but with the people around her, it becomes increasingly clear that relationships, friendships, professional partnerships, even her marriage, function in a specific transactional way. The pregnant friend at the recent red carpet appearance who Meghan was photographed draping herself over, both hands on the belly, making sure the frame captured every moment of it? That is not warmth. That is optics. That is a woman communicating to a watching world. See, someone loves me. Someone is my friend. I am not isolated. Everything is fine. And that performance makes the most sense when you understand the context it was happening in. The Variety piece had dropped. The Montecito isolation stories were circulating. The narrative of a woman with no real allies, no real friends, no real creative output was gaining ground. And there, on a red carpet, was the counter-image, carefully composed, strategically deployed. Harry wants to go home. Now let's talk about the man in the middle of all this, because Harry's story within this larger story is genuinely fascinating, and in some ways, genuinely sad. There is a growing consensus among people who have been watching this saga closely that Harry wants out. Not out of the marriage necessarily, though that conversation has its own trajectory, but out of this experiment, this reinvention project, this sustained attempt to build a media empire in California on the back of royal grievances and celebrity adjacency. The theory is this, that Harry's intensifying focus on Invictus, his Wounded Veterans Sports Initiative, is not purely philanthropic. It is his pathway home. Because Invictus gives him a reason to engage with the British establishment without having to formally reconcile or apologize or engage in the messy public business of negotiating his return. It lets him be in the same rooms as people connected to the royal family. It lets him be seen doing something genuinely good and genuinely his own. And it builds the kind of public goodwill that might eventually soften the ground enough for something like a return to become possible. But here is the brutal reality check that needs to accompany that theory. Prince William has been extraordinarily consistent in his messaging. He wants nothing to do with his brother right now. Not privately, not publicly, not in any form. The estrangement between these two brothers, who were once genuinely close, who stood together at their mother's funeral, who laughed together and worked together, and were, by all accounts, each other's most important relationship, is now so deep and so calcified that William's camp does not even leave ambiguous signals anymore. The message is clear, and the British public, who ultimately matter enormously in any conversation about royal rehabilitation, are not in a forgiving mood. They have not arrived at indifference yet. They are still in the active loathing phase. They see two people who caused immeasurable pain to a beloved queen in the final years of her life. They see a monarchy already destabilized by the ongoing Andrew crisis, now fighting to maintain its relevance and its dignity. And they see Harry and Meghan as agents of chaos who contributed to that destabilization and then retreated to a Californian mansion to sell the story. What appetite is there, genuinely, for their return? The opposite of love is indifference. Here is the thing that brings all of this together. Because the Montecito story, the Netflix story, the Variety story, the Neighbors, Oprah's silence, Ted Sarandos's alleged legal caution, they are all variations of the same phenomenon. The world is becoming indifferent to Harry and Meghan, and indifference, true indifference, is far more devastating than hatred. Hatred requires energy. Hatred means you still matter to someone enough that they feel something when they think of you. Hatred means you still have power over people's emotional landscape. Indifference means you have ceased to exist in any meaningful way for the people around you. It means when your name comes up, people shrug. It means your neighbors would rather reorganize their schedule than cross paths with you in a grocery store. It means the most powerful man in streaming would rather have his attorney on the phone than hear your pitch unarmed. And the media landscape is shifting too. Outlets that once would never have dared run a critical Meghan Markle piece for fear of being labeled racist, misogynistic, or retrograde are no longer afraid. Vanity Fair ran their famous American Hustlers cover. Variety went further. The protective shield that the couple spent years constructing, the one that turned every critic into a bigot and every unflattering story into an attack on their dignity, has eroded almost completely. Because they threw the accusations around too many times. They claimed racism without naming names or providing details. Harry walked back his own claims. The story shifted, the details changed, and the world noticed. You can only cry wolf so many times before people stop running toward the sound. Where do they go from here? So what is left? What are the actual options on the table for Harry and Meghan as we watch this very public unraveling continue in real time? For Meghan, the most logical next move is a divorce memoir. She owes a book to Penguin Random House, and the most commercially compelling book she could possibly write. The one that would actually sell, that would cut through the noise, that would give the world something it has not yet had. Is the book about the end of this marriage and this experiment. That is the story people would buy. That is the reinvention that would at least get her through the next chapter. Whether she has the courage or the self-awareness to write it honestly is a very different question. For Harry, the path is narrower and more emotionally loaded. He is a man who seems increasingly aware that he made a catastrophic miscalculation, that the life he traded, complicated, constrained, not without its genuine frustrations and injustices, was nonetheless a life with meaning, structure, purpose, and belonging. And the life he chose in its place has delivered celebrity without credibility, wealth that is burning through faster than it is being replaced, and an isolation that no amount of Montecito sunshine can disguise. The question for Harry is not whether he wants to go home. The question is whether home will have him. And right now, the answer from every corner, his brother, the institution, the British public, seems to be a very clear, very quiet, very devastating. Not yet. Maybe not ever. So here is what I want to leave you with today, because I think this story, as entertaining and as dramatic as it is also genuinely instructive. Fame, wealth, and a famous address are not enough to build real relationships. Not in Montecito, not in Hollywood, not anywhere. The people who last, who build actual legacies, actual connections, actual communities around themselves, are the ones who give something, who create something, who show up for people without calculating what they will get in return. Harry and Meghan arrived in America with every possible advantage, and they spent those advantages faster than anyone thought possible. They took from Netflix, from Spotify, from friends, from neighbors, from the institutions that shaped them, and now they are sitting in a $14 million house in one of the most desirable zip codes on Earth, and the people around them would rather not. That is a tragedy. It is also a warning. Now, I want to hear from you. Do you think Harry will ever find his way back to a meaningful relationship with his family? Do you think Meghan has any genuine path to reinvention left? And do you think the Montecito isolation is as complete as these sources suggest? Or is there more to the story? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with someone who has been following the Sussex saga. And if you are new here, subscribe, because we are not done, not even close.